Welcome, folks. Today we're diving into that really intense subject of discerning trauma bonding from love. It's, that fine line where passion can quickly turn into pain, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. It's fascinating to see how fear of abandonment can actually cause us to abandon ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like how those psychological chains can either keep us safe or trap us, almost like you're willingly shackled to a relationship, even when deep down you know it's hurting you.
Right, indeed. And it's so paradoxical, isn't it? One moment you're experiencing tenderness and intimacy, and the next, it's intensity that borders on toxicity.
Yeah, it's sort of like that famous study where strangers on a swaying bridge ended up feeling more attracted to one another. It underscores how fear and adrenaline really muddle our judgment about what love actually is.
That's a killer insight. It really makes you wonder, when is it love and when is it just like trauma bonding you to someone?
Exactly, and there's this traditional notion that love is neat and balanced. But the reality is a bit messy. Love should ideally bring growth and mutual intimacy, but when there's, continual strife, betrayal, or fear, then you're venturing into trauma bonding territory.
Right, I get that. So let's break it down a bit. How do we actually tell the difference?
Well, one thing is the nature of the bond itself. Healthy love at its best feeds on closeness and mutual vulnerability. It's built on a steady friendship and that, willingness to hold each other accountable in a nurturing way.
Yep, exactly. Whereas trauma bonding is more like a roller coaster with intense highs that are interspersed with equally brutal lows. Correct?
Yeah, totally. Picture it like one partner playing the perpetual victim while the other assumes the role of the oppressor. And in between these explosive episodes, there might be strange moments of tenderness, enough to keep you hooked, right?
Exactly. And that's where that addictive cycle kicks in, isn't it? The intermittent mix of sweet moments and painful withdrawal.
Yeah, it's truly like an addiction. And the focus shifts almost with a kind of tunnel vision where nothing else matters except clinging onto that relationship, even at the expense of your own well-being.
That's a really sharp observation. It's interesting how our nervous systems get stuck in a perpetual state of, vigilance when we're in these high-tension relationships.
Absolutely. The ongoing, often repeated betrayals and experiences of fear basically shut down our other emotions like loneliness, sorrow, and even anger. It becomes this single-minded pursuit to avoid abandonment, even if it's self-destructive.
Right, exactly. And how does intimacy play into this? When does it tip from being life-affirming to a trigger for more trauma?
Well, intimacy and healthy love is like the engine for growth, right? It's nurturing, kind of like a constantly evolving friendship where both partners genuinely believe that what's good for one is good for both.
Perfectly put. But then, trauma bonds capitalize on intensity rather than intimacy, correct?
Yes, exactly. Trauma bonds thrive on that rough and tumble intensity, where emotions are so heightened that they blur the lines between genuine vulnerability and, a power play. It's like mixing fear with passion so that you get these addictive surges.
Right on. So it sounds like when you're in a relationship where you've essentially lost touch with yourself because the fear of being alone overshadows everything else, that's a red flag.
Exactly, and here's where it gets really poignant. Out of fear of abandonment, we inadvertently sacrifice our own identity. The relationship becomes the center of our universe, leaving us disconnected from our true selves.
Absolutely, it's such a stark realization. I've seen that played out in so many cases. People trapping themselves in these cycles and gradually losing all those parts that once defined them.
Yeah, and what's striking is that the very elements that once symbolized love, the thrill, the passion, can under chronic stress and betrayal transform into these heavy chains that bind you. It's not black or white, it's complex and often deeply contradictory.
So, given this layered understanding, what can someone do if they recognize these trauma bonds in their own relationship?
One major angle is self-education, learning about healthy attachments versus trauma bonds. And there are incredible resources out there like Betrayal Bonds, Codependent No More, and Daring Greatly. Knowledge can be like a torch in a dark maze, right?
Absolutely, it can be. Right. Books and therapy and even workshops can be pivotal. But then there's this element of grieving, isn't there? Grieving the relationship you thought you had versus the one that is.
Yeah, exactly. Grieving is crucial. It's the acknowledgement that what you once hoped for or imagined is no more. It's, hard and laden with shame and uncertainty, but it's the first step to reclaiming yourself.
That's a must-do step. It does sound like a journey that demands, a lot of self-compassion and, courage.
Definitely. It's a long road to healing, and no amount of short-term therapy will bypass the deep-seated issues. You have to address the core of the trauma bond to truly break free and forge healthier relationships.
Right, that's essential. There's also that notion of shifting perspective, recognizing that bonds in themselves are neutral and can work for or against you.
Yes, absolutely. Bonds have always been our survival mechanism. It's not that the bonds are inherently toxic, it's how they are expressed and managed that makes all the difference.
Indeed. And if we actively choose, self-awareness and allow ourselves to grieve, then maybe, just maybe, we can transform even the heaviest bonds into something that supports a healthier, more fulfilled life.
Exactly, there's a lot of hope embedded in that idea. When you let go of the false familiarity of trauma bonds, there's a room to nurture authentic intimacy and, well, love that actually lifts you up.
Absolutely. Opening up to that possibility is inspiring. But here's a concern I have. How do we, ensure that the decision to stay in or leave a relationship is made freely and not just out of that desperate fear of being alone?
That's a great challenge. It really requires introspection and sometimes external support from, say, therapy or trusted friends. If you're constantly oscillating between leaning in and leaning out, it might be a signal that fear and unpredictability are dictating your choices rather than genuine love.
Very true. And that reminds me of, the Harvard study of adult development that linked high conflict and lonely relationships with, well, poor health outcomes. It really underscores that staying in a toxic cycle can be, more damaging than we often acknowledge.
Exactly, it's almost shocking. Bad relationships can be worse than those unhealthy habits like smoking. It's a wake-up call that at the end of the day, our relational well-being is a big part of our overall health.
Right, that study really brings it home. So ultimately, loving well means, embracing the possibility of change, giving up on idealized versions of love that, frankly, might be keeping us stuck in trauma.
Absolutely. It means accepting that our relationships evolve, that sometimes the bonds we once relied on need to transform so we can truly flourish. It's about making room for grief, accepting reality, and then, step by step, rebuilding healthier connections.
Spot on. And, that process of change can sometimes be as daunting as it is promising. But with tools, support, and a whole lot of self-compassion, it sounds like a journey worth taking for, reclaiming our true selves and cultivating authentic love.
Exactly. It's a truly hopeful stance. It reminds us that with hard work and the right resources, freedom and joy just might be just around the corner, even after heartache.
Yep, absolutely. Well, this discussion really opens up so many layers about what love really entails versus the pitfalls of trauma bonding.
It does indeed. And remember, it's all about understanding the complexity of our hearts and deciding to build relationships that truly empower and support us. Thanks for being part of this deep dive.
For sure, it's been great. Absolutely. Till next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and most of all, keep loving well.